Confession time. So a bunch of folks wonder why I'm so nice to people who come onto my account and tell me that I'm going to hell or trash me or my family and all that stuff. Now, some of you know my background BC, before Christ, so you know this stuff, but a lot of you don't, so I'll just give you the skinny. So if you don't know, my background is insane. Addiction, depression, a life spent in the New Age movement, owning one of the largest occult bookstores and pagan supply shops in the South when I was 25 years old, had my own radio show, did the historic research for loads of shows on the Discovery Channel, History Channel, stuff like that, and was on a lot of paranormal TV. I even had my own show contracted with Sci-Fi that had moved into production. There's the commercial for it right there. When I had a radical, personal encounter with Jesus that upended my entire life. And here we are, 12 years later, and now I live a life of service, traveling the world as a full-time non-traditional missionary, share with people the radical love of Christ. And after meeting Jesus, I was fiery. Okay, well, I'm still fiery, but in a different way. But in the beginning, I wasted so much time when I came to the faith looking for things that I perceived as wrong with other people's beliefs. How can I help the Lord battle his enemies and keep people on the narrow path? Looking back on it all, it's kind of embarrassing. But hey, it's a phase a lot of us go through. And unfortunately, a lot of us never get out of it. We substitute our zeal for the Lord for our zeal to find fault in others. I know what's right, and I know you're wrong, because I cannot be wrong. Therefore, you are wrong, and are gonna face judgment. When it's actually our judgment that we're talking about. And soon it consumes us. It can come from a kind of good place, sure, but it gets twisted quick. We want to make sure people are loving and worshiping God right. At least according to what we think or have been taught is right. In our passion, though, something negative happens. We begin to subconsciously look at ourselves as God's gatekeepers, God's defenders. Yeah, the infinite ever-living God needs us to guard his gates. We didn't receive any of God's awesomeness out of our own accord, yet we expect others to receive him out of theirs. That's messed up. And what happened to me personally is that I spent so much time looking for, well, what I thought were negatives in others, that I actually neglected my own relationship with God. I wasn't spending time with God. I was spending my time arguing, finding fault, and finger pointing. Until one day, Jesus took me to the Gospels. Who'd have thunk it, right? And in the Gospels, there were these dudes called the disciples. And man, they did not get along. You had fishermen and business owners. You had a tax collector, once under the employ of the Roman government. And you had a zealot, a guy that killed Romans. And don't forget, according to John 12:4-6, there was also a thief. And the ladies, they weren't much better. Basically, you had a group of people, most who would have never have been friends, with different backgrounds, agendas, and issues. And they all had different perspectives on what they considered right and what they considered wrong. And they each looked at Jesus a bit differently. But they all did have one thing in common, Jesus. And the Lord started walking me through his relationship with each of them. And that changed everything. And I realized we as humans love to separate where we disagree. I mean, look at what we did with what Christ taught us. Last check, over 45,000 faith streams, denominations, sects, cults, most of whom thinking that they are the gatekeepers of heaven, that they are the ones that are getting it right, which is a whole different video for another time. And then one day, about a decade back, I was trolling through an old cultural studies Bible of mine. Cultural studies, extremely important. Looking into Greek terms, and I came across the Greek word for the later English word devil, diabolos. A loan word by Latin Christian writers, diabolus, meaning accuser or slanderer, which shares a root with the verb diabolien, which means throwing across, slander, accusing, to cast apart, to throw apart, or to scatter. So going through the etymological carousel, devil means one who throws or one who divides. So it's interesting how many Christians in their flesh resort to devilish practices as accusers and ones who divide. You see, our human earthbound natures are easily influenced by forces that seek to divide us. Look around. But Jesus invites us to go higher and come together where we spiritually agree. Him, and move from unity in Him as our source, our foundation. So we can disagree until we are blue in the face, but we all see in part. We don't have the full view. But I have no right to accuse or slander anyone. That's devilish. So when I see people act in a way contrary to the gospel, even though they think they are righteous, and throw accusations without merit based on the way they've been taught to think and interpret texts by their own influencers, I choose the way of Jesus. If I'm seated with Him in heavenly places, and that's my true reality, then I should at least grit my teeth and act like it. I realize that getting mad at religious people for believing what they believe is a bit like getting mad at a rainstorm for making things wet. Better position is to try to find a place where we can all agree, Jesus, and go from there. Now, I'm not saying I agree with everything and it's just all love and peace and groovy, baby. I'm not saying folks don't need a little correction from time to time. But correction comes from the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And things like systems which subjugate and cause spiritual trauma and abuse in the name of Jesus, which is just gross, do need to be called out. But what I am saying is that when it comes to believers, I will always first look for where we are in agreement and work from there. Because trust me, no one human, no one group has all the answers or a monopoly on getting into heaven. So be as mean to me as you want. My identity isn't established by you or what you think of me. My identity is established by Jesus. I'm free from you because I'm free from me. And there's only one being who gets to define who I am. P.S. When you try to put God in a box, guess what? You're the one in the box. Get out of your box. Jesus didn't say we all had to get along, but He did say that as believers, we were united in Him in John 17, whether you like it or not. So for those who love to just find fault with others and are constantly looking for ways where someone else is lacking, before making wild accusations, check to see where your judgment is coming from. Maybe before looking for the speck in our brothers and sisters' eyes, maybe we should be looking for the beam in ours. That sounds good. Wonder who could ever say such a thing. That guy must have been crazy. By the way, as some of you know, I've created a backup account, the.ken.arrington, and I'd love for you to join me there. Eventually, that will become an account where I share more personal stuff just like this. And I hope you join me for the journey. God bless. See you soon.